Hi, Brian.
Hi.
Do you have a favorite soundtrack, movie soundtrack?
Oh my gosh. I do. I'll just say Grosse Point Blank for now because I have a lot of memories with that, with my family. And it really has like a really cool sort of punk meets like roots, like reggae almost like effect, and I really, really like that. And just have a lot of memories with my family listening to that. But there's one soundtrack that's by a composer who I'm just gonna totally blank on the name. It's a Japanese composer, and it was one of those movies that has like 4 different stories that like are separate and then like come together at the end. It was this really dark, sort of like beautiful movie, and this, I think his name is Ryo. I'm gonna forget. Anyway, but it's just beautiful strings, and I'm a sucker for string scores.
You say there were certain memories attached with your family. So what role did music and soundtracks play as you were growing up?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily soundtracks.
Okay.
I mean, it was music for sure. I mean, my dad and mom had a pretty extensive vinyl collection of like Simon and Garfunkel, and of course all the Beatles and Beach Boys, and then also a lot of classical as well. So I started piano really young, classical piano, and so in the house there'd be, up until I could sort of pick the music, like it was all all those sort of classic oldies, and then mixed with a lot of like contemporary and classical romantic, period stuff as well. So it was a pretty wide range until I could like start picking my own music. But my family, like we were pretty limited in terms of like video, like watching TV and stuff. So a lot of it was like playing games or like taking long drives, like going on trips and stuff. So where music would play a big role. And so when I think back about that, it's funny because when I was like a teenager, I thought I hated oldies because I like classic, Beatles, Beach Boys, all those bands, because we listened to it so much. And I like rebelled and like was only into like Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins and like Bush and stuff. And growing up in Seattle, there was so much good like grunge music. So I rebelled for a while, and now I'm back to liking the stuff I listened to growing up.
Was that by design? Did your parents try to instill in you a certain creativity, or by what you mentioned, not watching too much TV and... Yeah,
I don't know if it was totally by design. I think that along the way, now that I'm a parent, like I have 2 little babies, now along the way, like maybe there was conversations like kind of going along, like, oh well, he shows interest in these things, we should like, keep these certain things maybe away and then introduce these things as well. But I don't know. Neither of my parents are musical, other than appreciating music. And so when I chose to start piano really young, they fully supported. If I wanted to learn guitar or drums along the way, like they would completely, support me in that. And we would go to concerts, and music, just as long as I can remember, played a pretty big role. And now that I'm a parent, I bet it was very conscious of them to keep music around me instead of focusing on other things.
What attracted you to the piano instead of the other one?
Well, originally, like in school, they would bring all and really when we were really little, they'd bring all the instruments from like the band or the orchestra into the classroom, and kids could like touch them and figure out what instrument they wanted to do. And I came home wanting to play like viola. And my mom like briefly played violin when she was a kid, so she was like, oh, maybe that'd be good. And then I think they probably were like, I don't know if we want to listen to a kid playing viola, like learning viola. And we had a piano in the house, and so that was kind of the next runner-up for me to learn. And I liked it because there was pretty much, in terms of technique, there's not a lot of like extension, like it's not your mouth breathing and your hands and reading music. It's very much like all laid out in front of you and repeats itself. And so it was like learning a language. And I don't know because people come up to me sometimes and they want to learn how to play guitar or piano, and I don't know how hard it would be as an adult to learn piano, but as a kid it was like you were learning Dutch or like learning English, like when it wasn't your first language. So it's probably easier in a lot of ways to learn the musical language through piano. I still think that that's like the easiest way to learn music, through piano, and then you can translate it to guitar or to drums or whatever you want to learn.
And you were classically trained in
Yeah.
piano? Did you always know that was, especially early on, did you know that was kind of the path you wanted to follow, to go into music?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to be a veterinarian, like
Okay.
a doctor for animals, but it wasn't until like high school that I like took a advanced course in medicine for high schoolers, and that I was like, I can't do this, like it's way too hard. So then I had like these really influential musical mentors in my life from school, and it kind of dawned on me that I wanted to be a music teacher. So that's what I went to college for and got my degree in. And while I was in college, that's when I started writing songs and playing in a band and learning about that side of myself. But it wasn't until like pretty much after college, like much later, that I decided that this would be like a good choice of a career.
Were you all... Well, let me ask you differently. What age did you start writing your own music?
I was probably the first song I wrote. I remember there was a girl in our school who died from a car accident, like a year younger than me. I was 18, and I didn't know her very well. I mean, it was a pretty small community, so I knew who she was. And I think it was like a sort of like bodily reaction to that happening. Because at that age, when stuff like that happens, you don't really have the emotional capacity to like process it. And so my body was just sort of like, I think I should try to write a song about this. And I don't remember anything about the song or if I even tried to like sing it, but I wrote it down, probably like trying to sing it in my head or like play guitar to it or something. That was the first one I can remember. But I tried to write like girls' songs, like a little bit, but they never panned out. I'll just count like the first real song was probably around 20 years old, 19 or 20.
Because you mentioned your teachers, and am I right in saying that there was a percussion instructor who was particularly influential?
Yeah, his name is Dan Adams, and he was one of my university professors. And he was the first one that really pushed me. And I chose to get my degree in music education with a percussion emphasis because you had to pick an instrument to be like your main thing. And that in high school, that was my main guy who was influential. And then this new professor I had, Dan. And he was the first one that made me like bleed like for music. And it wasn't because he was a hard ass or like because he wanted me to like be embarrassed or something, but I think he finally like put a mirror up to my face and was like, you're only going to be as good, you've only been as good as your natural talent is like letting you be. And he showed me a way basically to be like, look, if you want, you need to learn how to practice, like really practice and get better. And the only way you can do that is just time and blood, sweat, and tears, literally. And I think that was it pushed me over the hump of finding that drive and that pushing me to always go further.
This might be a difficult question to answer, but what was that drive for you? Especially looking back now.
I don't think it was ever that I wanted to be a master of the instrument, but I wanted to like rub up against my boundary of what I'm like capable of doing. It's like a really bad example of this would be like somebody who like jumps off buildings, like for the rush of like base jumping, is like always pushing, always like to the highest that you can go and whatever that one thing is. And like at this point in my life, I know that I'm not going to be a master of guitar playing or classical piano or anything really involved with music. But I think that my sort of role in music is a little bit wider, like of understanding communication through music, and whether that's writing music for a film or a TV show or whatever. I sort of lucked into that being my thing. It just sort of made sense, and that I was like keen enough in the moment, I think, to like hear that, and then but it also lined up with how I like to write music anyway. And so I think that is now how the drive has evolved. At that point, it was very educational based and very like scholarly, and now it's much more like in the world, real life, talking about my life, talking about how I hope people relate to it.
Right. And this communication in music and kind of the reason why I started with soundtracks is because, well, like you say, you've been in a lot of TV shows and on commercials, that kind of stuff. But the emotionality and the mood of kind of music, how important has that become for you?
I mean, it's everything. I think, and I mentioned I'm a dad now. It's a challenge to really want to have music on all the time. Like, if music's your job, it's like your ears get tired, like you don't always necessarily want to be listening to music, but it's such a crucial part of being able to listen is one of the most important things I think we can do. Whether it's being able to listen to other people, that you're in relationships with or conversations with, but also being able to critically listen to music, I think is really special. Because it's going to be, it's subjective and it's objective at the same time. So it's like, you're going to hear something differently than I'm going to hear it. But at the same time, like, we both understand that it's beautiful, like, it's objectively beautiful. And I think that is kind of going back to the educational question, that is like my pursuit is to like always be pushing towards what can be like different to everybody, but at the same time, like, unifying.
Was there a particular song that made you realize this, that the kind of where you saw this connection? And this can be from your previous band Barcelona, or from what you're doing now. But was there a moment maybe where you realized kind of I can touch people with what I sing and what I play?
Yeah, like a song that I wrote. Barcelona had a song called "Please Don't Go" that was like probably our most like well-known sort of slow song, and I remember being surprised because there was like it was just so much space in that song. Like, it was just, it's really pretty, but it takes like a lot of effort to listen to. Like, it's not just going to be like fed to you. And that wasn't really intentional. It was just sort of how I wrote it. And I think that was probably the first song that I wrote that like let me know that space was okay, and like honestly like a good tool to use to like make people listen, and some people. And yeah, I don't know if there's one song, but that what came to mind.